But we begin with the race for the White House and Joe Biden's comeback landslide in South Carolina. A commanding win thanks to overwhelming support from African-American voters who make up more than half the Democratic vote in South Carolina. Bernie Sanders and Tom Steyer far back, and Steyer has now dropped out of the race. The former vice president will come away from South Carolina with at least 36 pledged delegates. He now stands in second place behind Sanders in that all-important measure. But Sanders is poised to take home a treasure trove on Super Tuesday, just 2 days away. He's ahead in the biggest states, has a boatload of cash, and the most energized organization. The big question for Biden now, can he make this a two-person race and stop Sanders from getting an insurmountable lead in delegates? Biden framed the choice last night.
If the Democrats want a nominee who's a Democrat, an Obama-Biden Democrat, then join us. Folks, win big or lose, that's the choice. Most Americans don't want the promise of revolution. They want more than promises. They want results.
And Vice President Biden joins us this morning. Congratulations, Mr. Vice President. Boy, you didn't mince any words last night. You're convinced the Democrats will lose big in November if Bernie Sanders is the nominee?
Well, I think he'll have great trouble bringing along other senators, keeping the House of Representatives, winning back the Senate, and down ballot initiatives. So I think it is a stark choice, and it's not about whether or not we restore the soul of the Democratic Party. It's about restore the soul and unite this country, the whole country. And I think I can do that.
You're fighting from behind on Super Tuesday, as you know. Senator Sanders just announced he raised $46.5 million in February. Polling shows he's ahead in most of the 15 contests, way ahead in California, the biggest prize. He has 23 campaign offices there. You have one. Isn't Senator Sanders poised to have a big delegate lead coming out of Super Tuesday?
Well, look, George, I'm not a pundit. He obviously has outspent me 10-1 or beyond that, but I think it's more as much the message and what we stand for and what we're going to do. And the idea that, Bernie is going to be able to win these, he could win California. Whoever the Democrat is, I think, will win California in the general election. But we still have to come along and win the Senate. We have to win in North Carolina. We have to win in Georgia. We have to win in Texas, Florida, et cetera. And so I think that, and I do very well in those states as well, and I haven't been able to spend the kind of money he has or put together the organization, although we did very well last night. So far this month, we've raised, which for us is a lot of money, about, I guess it's close to $18 million. We raised $5 million just from the win last night in a 24-hour period overnight. And so I think things are beginning to move.
Where can you win on Tuesday?
Well, I think we win in North Carolina. I think we can win in Georgia. I think, is Georgia Tuesday? I think
no,
it is.
Georgia's not Tuesday.
I think we win here in Alabama. No, it's not Tuesday. I misspoke. But anyway, I think we can win in the upcoming states. I think we can win most of the southern states. We're in contention, including in Texas. It's going to be very hard to make up the ground in California, but I think we can make up a lot of ground in California in 3 days. So I feel good about where it goes. And Super Tuesday is not the end, so only the beginning. We're about even on delegates right now. We've had more popular votes thus far than Sanders does. I feel good about going to places where I've always had significant support from the people who make up the Democratic electorate.
That endorsement from Jim Clyburn in South Carolina really made a difference for your campaign, and he delivered some tough love to your campaign last night. Let's listen.
We need to do some retooling in the campaign, no question about that. I did not feel free to speak out about it or to even deal with it inside because I had not committed to his candidacy. I have now. I'm all in it. And I'm not going to sit idly by and watch people mishandle this campaign.
Is he right? What kind of changes are coming?
Well, there's a lot of changes coming. This is, as you know from your past experience years ago, this is a matter of addition, not subtraction. And so we're attracting more and more people. We're adding more competent people, additional people that are very competent. I feel good about the top part of my campaign. We've had some difficulties across the board in terms of field organization. That's getting better because, again, look, we got outspent 40-1 in South Carolina. We've probably been outspent larger than that. I don't know the numbers. I know South Carolina for the first 4 encounters. But now we're in a position where we're beginning to raise some real money, and we feel good about where we're going. But we always can improve. We always can improve. And I can improve as well.
You served as vice president for 8 years under Barack Obama. Is the fact that he hasn't endorsed you hurting you, and is it time?
No, it isn't hurting me, and I don't think it's time. He and I have talked about this in the very beginning. I have to earn this on my own. Remember, George, the first thing that everybody said when I announced, the opposition, the Democratic opposition, said, well, Biden feels entitled because he's vice president. Imagine had the president endorsed me. It would have been, well, Biden's entitled because he thinks he's entitled because the president endorsed him. The president and I are close friends, and I have no doubt when I win this nomination, he will be out there full bore for me.
As you said, the race could have a long way to go. But even if you have a good night on Tuesday, Senator Sanders is likely to have a large delegate lead, and it could open up this possibility that he has the most pledged delegates going into the convention, but not a majority. Why shouldn't the candidate with the most pledged delegates going into the convention be the nominee?
For the same reason he didn't think when Hillary had the most pledged delegates that she should be the nominee. The process is laid out. I find, don't you find, George, that, that there's not a lot of consistency coming out of some of these campaigns? He wanted to make sure that you didn't enter with the most delegates and be the automatic nominee when he was running against Hillary, and all of a sudden he's had an epiphany. Look, I say what I mean. I mean what I say it, and I stay with it. I think the process is laid out. We should go with the process, but I'm not even certain he's going to go into this convention with the most delegates.
So let's lay this out, though. Let's say this goes straight to the convention. He's in first, you're in second. What's the argument you make to a superdelegate for why Joe Biden should be the nominee?
Because I can win and I can bring along Democratic victories up and down the state. I can keep the United States, I can win the United States Senate at the top of the ticket. I can keep the House and increase the number in the House. I can go into every state in the nation. I can go into purple states and we can win. I can win in places where I don't think Bernie can win in a general election. But that's my judgment. That's just my judgment. It's up to them to decide. But most people I know, whether they are quote establishment Democrats or just people concerned about making sure that we not only beat Donald Trump but have enough votes in the House and Senate to pass progressive legislation like I proposed, know that we have to do better up and down the ladder in terms of state and local races. And look, in 2018, George, we went through this before you and I. I went into 24 states, purple states, for over 65 candidates. They wanted me in, and we won. We won. They were asking me to come in. I don't know that they asked Bernie. They may have. I doubt it, because they know I can be value added to their campaigns. I can pick up independents. I can pick up liberals as well as moderate Democrats.
Before you go, I want to ask you about the coronavirus. The president, as you know, is calling the Democrats' critique of his response a hoax. How would the overall response to this virus have been different if you were president?
Would have been fundamentally different. We set up a whole system on the Ebola virus and with the Ebola disease that we were all concerned about, a trans-pandemic disease that existed. And look, right now, you have this president hasn't allowed his scientists to speak, number one. He has the vice president speaking, not the scientists who know what they're talking about, like Fauci. Number two, they haven't even prepared a test kit to determine whether or not anybody has the virus. They're not even available. They say now they'll be available by the end of the week or next week. They haven't set up a pattern on how to proceed. They've cut the funding for the CDC. They've cut the Center for Disease Control. They've cut the funding they've tried to cut the funding for NIH, the National Institute of Health. They have eliminated the office we set up in the president's office to deal with pandemic diseases. This has been outrageous, the way they proceeded. They should let the scientists speak. I've been talking about this for a while. They don't even have a test kit to determine whether or not someone has the disease. Look, this is about knowing where it is, who has it, and how to deal with it. And I see I see no preparedness other than a political talking points, putting someone in charge who is not a scientist and muzzling the scientist. Look, Fauci's been here anyway, all the way back to the Bush administration. What's going on here? This is not a Democratic hoax. This is incompetence on the part of the President of the United States at the expense of the country and the world.
Mr. Vice President, thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you, George.